This is going to be the weirdest video I've ever made. Brandon Sanderson sucks. So a few days ago I saw this video called The Way of Kings Sucks, and I really loved that video. I loved the format, and I'm going to blame. And what I will do is actually something very similar, which is take all the criticisms that have been thrown at Brandon Sanderson, the godfather of fantasy, and actually examine if they are good or if they are bad in my eyes. In other words, do I agree with these criticisms of Sanderson or do I not? The first criticism, by the way, I'm not going to waste any time. The first criticism is that his writing sucks. Sanderson's writing, his prose, his language, his writing style, his voice, it sucks. A lot of people claim this about Sanderson, and I'll give you something. I was actually one of those people. I was one of the people who actually claimed that Sanderson's prose, Sanderson's language, use of language was awful. I don't agree with myself anymore. And it is because of a new principle I have adopted into my life. And it is to actually examine what the author was trying to achieve. When Sanderson writes prose, he actually writes to have as invisible language as he possibly can. He doesn't like his language to obstruct the story, as clear as is possible. And this is why a lot of people say it's very easy to follow Sanderson's books. Yes, it is very easy to follow his books, primarily because he puts effort to actually make sure that his writing style does not obscure the story and the point of the story. And this is where I actually failed before, because I failed to take this into consideration. It means for the first 3 years, I have known Sanderson. I have criticized him for having terrible prose, for having terrible writing style. But he doesn't have a terrible writing style. He has a very good writing style. It's so good that it's not visible. You can't see it. And why is it good? Because the point is to have as invisible a language as you possibly can, so that the point can be as clear as it possibly can be, and therefore it's very easy to follow along in such a complicated, sprawling epic, which is like The Way of Kings, the Mistborn books, and Elantris and all of his books, right? He has a lot of complicated plots he doesn't want to obscure, and therefore lately I have come to actually appreciate Sanderson's prose and writing style a lot more. And this criticism that he has bad writing style is without any substance, because it really does not examine the author. It does what I used to do, which is think only about yourself and what you want, and it's only about me, about me, about me. If Sanderson doesn't do something I think is good, I'm going to give him 0 stars. This is something I used to do a lot. Don't do it. Don't be an asshole. This guy's writing style is so good. Why? Because it achieves what he was trying to set out to do. When you talk about something as subjective as writing style, it is sometimes crucial and in fact very good to consider what the author was trying to do. And by doing that, you will come to understand and appreciate something you do not naturally find good. Because yes, I do not honestly naturally find that his writing style is suited for my diet. But there is that other part of me, the new part of me, that actually looks at what he was trying to do, examines what he has done, and notices that he does such a good job. So yeah, I encourage you to actually take a look at his objectives, and actually the objectives of all authors. And this is what I really encourage people to do. And this is what I want people to actually start doing, right? Start considering the author, because guess what? That's the person that wrote the story. What were they going for? His characters are awful. That his characters are generic. But here's what I hate more than anything. I hate unique that is bad. In other words, I actually don't mind generic. I don't hate a lot of tropes out there. I do hate some of them, but I don't really hate a lot of them. In fact, even if you have a trope that I don't like in a book that I'm reading, I'm not really going to be that bothered if you're executing well. So with Brandon Sanderson, his characters are generic. Yes, Kaladin, for instance, is your stock good guy. Shallan is your student who's going to some mentor, and she's looking for a mentor. In fact, when we meet her for the first time, she's going to Harbranth. If you talk about Dalinar, there's a lot of characters in the fantasy genre who are badass action heroes. We have counters like, for instance, Raoden, the mistreated prince who has been exiled. We have a lot of these characters from Brandon Sanderson. I hate misexecution more than I hate generic. I am perfectly happy with Kaladin. You know why? Because he's one of the best written fantasy characters of this entire last decade. Why? Because guess what? Kaladin executes the fundamentals of the character extremely well. So, yes, Kaladin from the Way of Kings is generic. Yes, Rayoden is kind of generic. Serene is not. Vin is kind of. She's like the, Mistborn. She has all the things, right? A lot of these characters are generic, but are they badly executed? Because you see, the holy grail in books that I read, in fact, every book I've ever loved, is not a book with a flawed character or a unique character or that is 100% unique. It's a book that is well executed. In other words, it is trying to do something and it executes that very well. Simple. Brandon Sanderson's characters are not bad and they are generic, yes, but generic is not bad. Don't get it twisted. Badly executing something that you want to achieve, that is way worse than having a generic character. This is why so many people love Kaladin. They love Shallan. They love Dalinar. Even though these characters are playing on conventional archetypes, they still very much beloved and people still find following their chapters captivating. And so there you go. It's not bad to have generic things. It's not bad to have especially generic characters. In fact, what is good about Sanderson is that he executes well. He needs to slow down. That the output of Sanderson is too much and it is negatively impacting his stories. I have heard this a lot. So many people talk about Sanderson and they say, hey, I don't like this new book that he has published, or I don't like the latest entry in his epic books because he's too fast and it is showing that, he's writing too much and he needs to take more time with the plot. And it is only this year that I've heard this one. Maybe I am new to this, but yeah, it is only this year I have heard this, and absolutely I kind of agree with it, but I don't really agree with it completely. Why? Because Sanderson still has 5-star rating. I think this is much more of something that is local. In other words, it's not a majority of people. In fact, a ludicrous majority of people enjoyed Rhythm of War, and it has technically 5 stars on Amazon. Yeah, so I don't think it's a fair criticism because he's still doing remarkably well. When and the day the reviews and the ratings and the stars for Sanderson books drop below 4, that's the day I will actually advise him, maybe you want to slow down. Yeah, but until that day, until the day he gets 3.99, something like that, I'm not going to really tell him because so far it is working phenomenally. He should keep doing it. So what is actually a criticism that is lauded at Sanderson that I still think is actually completely fair? And this criticism, I have seen it in few places, and it's that the earlier work of Sanderson, like Elantris, it doesn't have a lot of thematic depth. For instance, if you take a look at The Way of Kings, it is so rich with themes. It is so literally stock full of themes, like the ideals, the immortal words that Kaladin has to speak. These words, each one of them, is a theme, and these books that he's writing lately are much more rich and full of depth than his Elantris, which was technically like a cool fantasy story and a cool fantasy premise with the city of Elantris. But other than that, I really didn't find much depth in his earlier work, and I agree with this criticism wholeheartedly. Is it bad? I would say don't despair. Why? Because you see, he got better. Brandon Sanderson got better. So many authors do not get better. In fact, they double down on their mistakes because they think that is sort of good or it makes them unique. But Sanderson learned. He seems to be getting better with every every half a decade, new Sanderson books reach a new height. And this is very good, and it's a very good quality. If you're a fan of Sanderson, it is actually, you should be very excited for 2025 Sanderson. So wish him good health. And I think this criticism, is it of an old entry into his books? Yes. But again, Elantris is out there. You can pick it up, you can read it. It's a published book, and you have to pay money to read it. So yeah, it is a fair criticism. Again, it is still kind of a positive. I don't really have a lot of negative things to say about Sanderson. So this has been a very weird video. I love this video. The Way of Kings sucks, something like that. It was a very beautiful video. It came up on my For You page, something like that. I watched the whole thing, I loved it, and I'm making this video. I am completely ripping off this format. It is not my format, I didn't come up with it, but I hope that it can all be, you know, in sort of fair faith, okay, you know, because I don't mean any negative. I loved his concept so much. Have a nice day, bye.